I stood in the back of the church, watching the man I loved marry someone else. What he didn't know, I was 3 months pregnant with his child. For 15 years, I kept this secret, until the day his daughter showed up at his door, and everything he built came crashing down. If you're ready for a story about secrets, sacrifice, and the truth that changes everything, stay with me until the end. And if you love dramatic real-life stories, hit that like button now. Let me take you back to where it all started. I was 26, fresh with ambition and a portfolio full of dreams. I'd just landed a position at Harrison & Associates, one of the most prestigious architectural firms in the city. I specialized in sustainable design, green buildings that breathed with nature rather than against it. My sketches covered my tiny apartment walls, structures that could change skylines and save the planet at the same time. That's where I met Daniel Whitmore. He was 38, a senior partner with silver streaks in his dark hair, and a reputation for designing spaces that made people feel something. When he walked into a room, conversations shifted toward him like he had his own gravity. I was assigned to his team on the Riverside Cultural Center project, a massive glass and timber structure meant to bring art to the waterfront. Our late nights started innocently enough. Chinese takeout at midnight, arguing over load-bearing walls and natural light angles. He listened when I spoke, really listened, like my ideas mattered as much as his decades of experience. He'd lean back in his chair, studying my face while I explained passive cooling systems, and I'd feel my cheeks burn under his attention. I knew he was married, Victoria. He mentioned her sometimes, always with this distant tone, like she was a colleague he'd lost touch with, rather than his wife. We grew apart, he'd say, staring out at the city lights. We're staying together for appearance. Her father's on the board. It's complicated, and God help me I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to. The first time he kissed me, we were alone in the office at 2 in the morning. Rain hammered against the windows. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and said, "You're extraordinary. You know that." I should have pulled away. I should have remembered that married men who cheat with you will cheat on you. But I was young and stupid, and so desperately in love, that I kissed him back. 6 months, that's how long our affair lasted. 6 months of hotel rooms that smelled like lavender and lies. 6 months of deleted text messages and separate cars. 6 months of him promising, "I'm leaving her. Just give me time. You're my future." I designed our dream house in secret, a cabin in the mountains with floor-to-ceiling windows and a studio for me to work. I imagined us there, legitimate and free. Then came the 2 pink lines. I stared at that pregnancy test in a coffee shop bathroom, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. But underneath the terror was this bloom of joy. A baby, our baby. Surely this would be the thing that finally made him choose me. Surely he'd want this family we could build together. I told him in his car, parked in a lot behind a restaurant where no one knew us. I watched his face as I showed him the test, waiting for the smile, the excitement, the relief that now he had a reason to leave his hollow marriage. Instead, his skin went gray. His hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "You can't keep it," he said. His voice was flat, mechanical. "I just made partner. Victoria's father engineered the whole thing. If this comes out now, I lose everything." I couldn't breathe. The car felt like it was shrinking around us. "Get rid of it," he continued, still not looking at me. "I'll pay for everything. We can go back to how things were. How things were. Like I was an affair he could file away and return to when convenient. Like our baby was a problem to be solved, rather than a life to be celebrated." I got out of that car, and I never got back in. "I'm keeping this baby," I told him through the window. "With or without you." He chose without. 2 weeks later, a cream-colored envelope appeared in my mailbox. "Mr. and Mrs. Victoria Whitmore request the honor of your presence at the renewal of their wedding vows." I didn't go, obviously, but I looked up photos afterward, torturing myself. There he was, smiling in a tailored suit, his arm around Victoria's waist, looking like every promise he'd made Me had been vapor all along. I transferred to our firm's coastal office before I started showing. Told everyone I wanted a change of scenery, a fresh start. The truth was, I couldn't bear the thought of running into him, of him seeing my growing belly and feeling nothing but inconvenience. I moved into a small apartment overlooking the ocean, where the sound of waves covered the sound of my crying. Lily was born on a Tuesday in March, 6 pounds and 3 ounces of perfect. She had Daniel's eyes, that unusual gray-green that changed with the light, and his stubborn chin. When the nurse asked about the father for the birth certificate, I said he wasn't in the picture. It wasn't a lie. He'd drawn himself out of our picture the moment he chose his career over his child. The question I got asked most as Lily grew up was why I stayed silent. Why didn't I demand child support? Why didn't I expose him? Why didn't I force him to acknowledge his daughter? The answer is complicated, and it took me years to understand it myself. I stayed silent for Lily, not for Daniel, not to protect his reputation or his marriage, for her. I didn't want my daughter growing up as the other woman's child. I didn't want her carrying the weight of being a secret, a scandal, a mistake in everyone else's eyes. I wanted her to have peace, to have a childhood uncomplicated by adult betrayals and public shame. So I built us a quiet life by the sea, just the two of us, and I told her that her father had loved us but couldn't stay. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was kinder than the alternative. The hardest days were the ones you'd expect. Father's Day at school, when all the other kids made cards, and Lily would draw pictures of flowers instead. "For you, Mama," she'd say, "because you're my mom and my dad." I'd hold her tight and pretend my heart wasn't breaking. Or the time she was 8 and asked point blank why she didn't have a daddy like everyone else. I told her that families come in all shapes, that love is what makes a family, not structure. She seemed satisfied, but I saw the question lingering in her eyes for years afterward. Meanwhile, Daniel's life sparkled on without us. I'd see him sometimes on social media, not because I was looking, but because he was impossible to avoid. Architect of the Year, featured in design magazines, photographed at charity galas with Victoria and their 2 sons, looking like the perfect family man. He became a spokesperson for family-centered design, for creating spaces where people could connect and grow together. The irony was almost funny. Almost. There were moments I resented him, with a fury that scared me. Moments when I was up at 3 in the morning with a sick toddler, exhausted and alone, while he slept peacefully in his architect-designed house. Moments when I couldn't afford new shoes for Lily, because daycare costs ate my entire paycheck. Moments when I wanted to burn his perfect life down, just so he'd feel a fraction of what we'd endured. But mostly, I just focused on us, on being the mother Lily deserved. I packed her lunches with notes that said, "You're amazing." I showed up to every school play, every art show, every tiny victory. I taught her to be kind and strong and unafraid. And somewhere along the way, I discovered that we were enough, just us. We were complete. My career rebuilt itself slowly. I worked twice as hard as everyone else, designing community centers and affordable housing projects that actually meant something. By the time Lily was 14, I'd become lead architect on a major urban renewal project. We moved out of that tiny apartment into a real house with a yard. Lily's artwork covered every wall. We'd made something real, something solid, something that couldn't be taken away. I thought the story ended there. I thought we'd continue forward, just the two of us, and Daniel would remain a ghost from my past that I'd successfully outrun. I was wrong. Lily was 15 when she came to me with a secret of her own. She'd ordered a DNA test as for a school genetics project, one of those ancestry kits that maps your heritage and connects you with relatives. It seemed harmless. I signed the permission form without thinking twice. But those tests do more than trace your roots. They find people. They build bridges you didn't know existed. She found him through some DNA matching database. She found Daniel Whitmore, yeah. He'd done one of those tests too, probably curious about his family tree, never imagining his hidden daughter might be searching. Lily sat me down at our kitchen table, her laptop open between us, and said the words that shattered our careful peace. "Mom, I found him. I found my father, and he doesn't know I exist, does he?" I couldn't lie anymore. She was 15, nearly grown, looking at me with those gray-green eyes that belonged to someone else. So I told her everything. The affair, the pregnancy, his choice, the vow renewal, why I stayed silent. I watched her face change as she absorbed each detail, watched her childhood understanding of her absent father transform into something more complicated and painful. "I deserve to meet him," she said when I finished. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "I deserve answers." Every protective instinct in me roared against it. "He rejected us once," I told her. "He'll do it again. Please, Lily, don't give him the chance to hurt you." But she was my daughter, stubborn and brave and unwilling to live with questions. "Then at least I'll know," she said. "I'm tired of the hole in my heart, Mom. I need to know who he is, even if he disappoints me." What could I say to that? How could I deny her the truth she'd earned? So I helped her write a letter. I watched her gather photos of herself at every age, evidence of the childhood he'd missed. I held her hand while she practiced what she'd say. And then I watched my baby girl become brave enough to face the man who'd abandoned her before she was born. She went to his office on a Thursday afternoon. She didn't want me there. This was something she needed to do alone. I waited at home, pacing our living room, checking my phone every 30 seconds, imagining every possible outcome. The call came 2 hours later. Lily was crying, but not the way I'd feared. She was angry. "He denied it at first," she told me, her voice thick with tears. "He said it was impossible, asked who put me up to it, like I was some kind of scam artist." But Lily had come prepared. She'd shown him the photos, the DNA results, her birth certificate with the date that made it impossible to deny. She'd watched him count backward, watched the blood drain from his face as he realized the timeline matched our affair exactly. "And then you know what he said?" Lily's voice cracked. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I wish I'd known." He said, "Dub, does anyone else know about this?" He was worried about his reputation, Mom, not about me, about himself. My heart broke for her in ways I hadn't known were possible. I'd protected her from this rejection for 15 years, and here it was anyway, cutting her just as deep as I'd feared. But the story didn't end there, because Daniel's wife, Victoria, walked into his office in the middle of their confrontation. She heard enough. She saw Lily's face, a young female version of the husband she'd been married to for 20 years. And 15 years of lies unraveled in 15 minutes. The divorce papers were filed within a week. Victoria demanded everything: the house, the savings, majority custody of their sons. Daniel's boys, 12 and 14, sided with their mother. They refused to speak to their father, refused to acknowledge the half-sister they'd never known existed. His perfect family splintered like glass. But the real karma came from somewhere I didn't expect. Word spread. In architectural circles, reputation is everything. And Daniel had built his on being a family man, an advocate for spaces that brought people together. The irony of him having a secret child he'd abandoned wasn't lost on anyone. Clients started dropping him. His partners at the firm, worried about their own reputations, forced him out. The man who'd sacrificed us to protect his career watched that career crumble because of the very secret he demanded I keep. The media picked it up. Award-winning architect's secret love child exposed. Photos of Lily, which I hated. Opinion pieces about moral hypocrisy and public figures. Our quiet life by the sea became a spectacle I'd spent 15 years trying to avoid. But something unexpected happened through all of it. Lily got clarity. "He's not who I imagined," she told me one night, curled up on the couch beside me. "I built him up in my head as this mystery, this missing piece. But he's just small. He's not even sorry. He's just scared of consequences." She was quiet for a moment, then added, "I don't need him, Mom. I never did. I just needed to know. And now I do." We healed together after that. Not because Daniel's life fell apart. I took no satisfaction in his downfall, only sadness for what could have been. We healed because the truth, as painful as it was, freed us from the weight of secrets. Lily understood why I'd stayed silent, and I understood why she'd needed to break that silence. Sometimes the fantasy of a father is better than the reality, but reality is what lets you finally move forward. Daniel tries now, in his awkward way. He sends texts Lily rarely answers. He mails gifts she never asked for. He invited her to coffee once, and she went, but came home unimpressed. He spent the whole time talking about himself, she said, about how hard this has been for him, like he's the victim in all this. She saw him clearly then, without the rose-colored glasses of hope. He was just a man who'd made selfish choices and was finally facing their cost. Lily is 16 now, applying to art schools, thriving despite everything. She creates these beautiful mixed media pieces about identity and family and what it means to be whole. One of her pieces shows a house with half its walls missing, but flowers growing through the foundation. She called it incomplete but blooming. I cried when I saw it. As for me, I was promoted to regional director last year. My urban renewal project won awards. I bought us a bigger house with a studio where Lily can paint and I can draft. We've built something real, something that can't be shaken by one man's choices or fears. Daniel remarried quickly to someone younger, someone who doesn't know his history. He's trying to rebuild his image, reclaim his career. I wish him nothing, not harm, not success, just nothing. His relationship with Lily remains surface level. Birthday cards, occasional coffee, the legal minimum of acknowledgement. She calls him Daniel, not Dad. You were both, she told me once. You were my mom, and you were there when I needed a dad too. He's just biology. I'll take that. I'll take being the parent who stayed, who showed up, who loved her enough for two. Looking back, would I do things differently? Yes. I'd tell Lily sooner, on my terms, with gentleness and preparation. I'd rob that secret of its power before it could detonate. But would I regret the choices I made? The life we built, the strength my daughter learned from watching me survive? Never, not for a second. Sometimes the person who walks away doesn't realize what they've lost until it's too late. Sometimes the one left behind discovers they never needed rescuing. I didn't get the love story I wanted 15 years ago in that car when I showed Daniel the pregnancy test. I got something better. I got to be the hero in my daughter's story. I got to show her that one parent who truly loves you is worth more than two who don't. I got to prove that we were always enough, just us, just as we were. The truth found its way out eventually, the way truth always does. But by then, Lily and I had already built something that couldn't be destroyed by it. We'd built home. We'd built love. We'd built a life so solid that when the earthquake of revelation came, we stood together in the rubble and realized we were still standing. That's the real karma, not his punishment, my peace. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about secrets, survival, and strength. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice to protect someone you love? Share your story in the comments. I read every one. Thank you for listening to mine.